While I was thinking about what to say this morning, it came to my mind, your story. And I was thinking, and not that many of you really know my story. So I thought I'd tell you a story this morning. I was brought up the youngest daughter of two daughters. My sister is nearly 7 years older than me, so it was like having sort of two only children, really. And we grew up and we were sent to Sunday school as young children. And I grew up through this Sunday school. It was a branch of a Pentecostal branch Sunday school of a Pentecostal church, and the teachers really loved the children, and I was nurtured and loved throughout this Sunday school. And at the age of 10, I decided to give my life to Jesus, and I went forward this Sunday evening and gave my heart to Jesus, and from that moment onwards, there was a hedge of protection around my life. I can't explain it, and I'm not religious as such, really, but wasn't a terrible child. I was just ordinary, but I'm no saint either. I grew up, and this protection grew with me, and God's love has been with me all through my life. And as I grew up, at the age of 16, I went through the waters of baptism, and I was baptised, and my faith got stronger. And I then decided, as I grew up and left school, all my friends were sort of getting married, and who should I marry? And I prayed about it, and a friend of mine from church, her brother was going to a fancy dress party and said, do you know anybody? So she said, yeah, I know somebody. Anyway, I started going out with him. He wasn't a Christian. And he said, I know you go to church, and I'd never stop you from doing that, but don't expect me to go because I'm not interested. So I said, fine, okay. And we started going out together, just out to dinner a few times a week. And then a few months later, he'd had an argument with his friend, and he was in rather a bit of a dull mood. And I said to him, why don't you come to church with me tomorrow? And he, yeah, all right then, okay. And he came, and he gave his heart to God then, that night. And a couple of years later, we on 27th of April 1974, we were married. And then a couple of years later, we had our first son. And 2 years later, we had our daughter, and then we had another son. We had three lovely children, and we grew up. They grew up on a high-rise housing estate in East London, and it wasn't very nice. And I hated where I lived. I hated the school where the children went, and I wasn't very happy at all. And we prayed about it, and we started going to a church, and we met these friends, and they took us on a group holiday, and we came up to the Yorkshire Dales, and I fell in love with the area. I just loved being out on the Dales. It was lovely, and we stayed over at Coverdales and came into Richmond a couple of times, and we pulled into a lay-by in Catterick and waited for these people to come and join us, some people to come and join us. And there was this lorry full of soldiers that were all blacked up and in uniform, and they got climbed out of the lorry and crawled up the hillside in amongst the trees. And my eldest son, he thought it was lovely. Wasn't Uncle Phil lovely for doing that for us, for making those soldiers come and show us what they do? He thought it was lovely. He thought Uncle Phil had done it. But it was lovely. And then a couple of years later, we came back on holiday again with the same group. And I had this feeling. We were out on the Dales one day, and I know it sounds silly, but I have learned that they are shepherds' huts. But I thought they were derelict houses. But I got this feeling of building a sanctuary. They're little sanctuaries in the fields. And when we got back home again, Jack said, yeah, we've got to move up there. And how can we? We prayed about it. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Jack lost his sight and had to give up work. And then he had to go to Torquay to learn how to be blind for 3 months. And it was horrible bringing up children, 3 boisterous children in a flat, not liking their dad had gone away for a while. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. But God was faithful. He was there all the time. And thank you, Terry, for reading that poem. It was lovely. And it really describes exactly how I feel from time to time, how I felt from time to time. Then when Jack came back, we decided then to put our name on the exchange list, and we were told sort of, oh, nobody would ever want to move sort of from there down to Dagenham. We had a few inquiries. We had this one inquiry, and she wouldn't come to the phone. The lady wouldn't come to the phone. She wanted to negotiate through an 18-year-old child. And we decided that, we wouldn't do that. And then we had another inquiry a couple of years later. And we came up and saw their house. We liked the house because I fell in love with it. It was so different to where we lived. But they, this was in the November. And they said, well, we could be moved by Christmas, but let's wait until after Christmas. And when we came up to view the house, we went to what was then the Zetland Church. And a lady came up to us and said, I don't know what this means. It doesn't really make sense, but you're in the right area, but the wrong house. And we couldn't understand it. And I said to Jack, what do we do? So he said, well, we'll go along with it. We'll still go along and see what happens. Anyway, after Christmas, the lady said, well, we can't move until after the winter because February could be quite nasty up here in the winter. So we decided then to move at Easter. And then when Easter came, it was something else. And then it just didn't seem to happen. So we put our name on the exchange list again. And by return of post, we got this inquiry. And when Jack was talking to this lady, she said, I think I've spoken to you before. And it was the lady that we refused 2.5 years previous. And we sent her a video of our house, and and she said yes, she wanted it, she wanted to move, and we were told that it would take up to 8 to 12 weeks to move, and 4 weeks later, we were moved. Don't ask me how it went so quickly. It just did. The council, because we lived in council property, the council okayed it straight away, and we were moved. And it was a totally different house. Well, it was the same type of house, but it was a totally different house. So the lady was right, the right area, but the wrong house. And we moved to Colburn here, and I was so happy. We were 19 years living in that house, and I was so happy, and everything. Although we had to leave her son behind because he decided that he didn't want to move up in the end. He wanted to stay down in London, so he stayed down, and that was the only bugbear that we had. But he was 20 by that time, and he decided that's what he wanted to do with his life, and so he stayed behind. But then, unfortunately, Jack got ill, and he passed away 14 years ago, and the Lord took me on another journey, and He's taken me into widowhood. And what an extraordinary journey I've been on. It's been hard. It's been really, really hard. But He's always been there. He is faithful to the ends of the earth. He has been with me. He's my friend. He's my dependent. He's just everything that I have never had before, and I've since moved into a little bungalow in Tunstall, and that is my sanctuary. I have made my sanctuary. I have come a full circle. I am so happy, and it is only what God has done in my life. If you haven't got God in your life, then please ask Him in today, because you cannot go wrong. He has a plan for your life. He has a way through every situation you could go through, every storm that you could face. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Thank you.